My name is Isaac Monroe, 38 years old, a lawyer in New York. From the outside, my life might seem like the dream of many. An office on a high floor, an income sufficient to never worry about money, and a solid reputation in the legal world. But I don't live for those things. I live simply. A small apartment in Brooklyn, unbranded clothes, and an old car that's been with me for a decade. To me, money isn't for showing off. It's for ensuring that the people I love never go without. My parents, George and Martha Monroe, live in a small suburban town in Ohio. They're retired, and I want them to enjoy these years without any worries. Since my career stabilized, I've given them a credit card, telling them to use it freely. Buy good food, travel, or fix up their old house. They always say, "Thank you, Isaac." But I know they don't truly understand what I've done to earn that money. To them, I'm just the successful son, a vague label they proudly mention to the neighbors. Then there's Samuel, my younger brother, 6 years my junior. He just returned from Japan after nearly a decade of studying and working. Samuel has always been the center of attention in our family. As a child, he was the witty kid who knew how to make our parents laugh, and he was spoiled more than I was. I don't hold it against him. I'm the eldest. I'm used to stepping aside, but sometimes I wonder if my parents truly see me or if they only see my role. The provider, the one who carries the load. I remember when we were young, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework while Samuel ran around outside, free from the pressure to study like I was. Mom would bring him cookies, her face beaming, while I got a pat on the shoulder and a "study hard, Isaac." I don't resent it, but those moments are etched in me like a small scratch that never fully heals. Samuel came back on an autumn afternoon bringing stories of Tokyo, its streets glowing with neon lights, and the graphic design contracts he'd signed. My parents lit up as if he were the sun walking into the house. I stood there in the corner of the living room smiling, but something in my chest quietly ached. I told myself, he's been gone for so long, they're just happy. But that feeling, no matter how I tried to bury it, smoldered like a tiny ember. I had arranged everything for the reunion dinner. I set up a big table at my parents' house, ordered food from their favorite restaurant, and even bought an expensive bottle of wine I knew Dad liked. When I arrived, my parents were busy hugging Samuel, listening to his stories about his trips to Kyoto. I set the bags down, went to the kitchen, and started setting the table. No one noticed. I didn't expect them to thank me, but a glance, a question about me might have been enough. The dinner began, and the family gathered around Samuel. He talked about his big projects, his small but stylish apartment in Shibuya, and how he'd learned the art of Japanese tea making. Everyone laughed, marveled, while I sat there, sipping wine, nodding along to his stories. At one point, I tried to share about a major case I'd just won, an environmental lawsuit that took 2 years. Dad only mumbled a response before turning to Samuel. "So, are you planning to open a studio here?" I smiled, swallowed the pang of hurt, and told myself, "It's fine, Isaac. They're just excited." That night, driving back to Brooklyn, I looked at the city through the window, its lights blurred in the rain. I thought about my parents, about Samuel, about the years I'd worked tirelessly to be someone they could rely on. I don't need them to sing my praises, but I want them to see me, not as a money-making machine, but as Isaac, their son, Samuel's brother. The weeks following the reunion dinner, I tried to slip back into my usual routine. The office, the courtroom, late nights hunched over my laptop with a cold cup of coffee. It was all familiar, like a safe loop, but something was off, like a discordant note in a symphony I'd played for too long. I couldn't stop thinking about my parents, about Samuel, and about their gazes at the dinner, as if I were merely a shadow in my brother's story. Then the credit card bill arrived. I usually don't check it closely, just skim through to ensure there are no errors. My parents have used the card for years, mostly for small things: groceries, plumbing repairs, or a short trip to Lake Erie. The amount rarely exceeded $2,000 a month. But this time, the number on the screen made me pause, my coffee cup frozen mid-air. $5,000. I frowned, pulling up the transaction history. A series of unusual charges, high-end restaurants, a furniture store, and a large transaction at a car dealership. I told myself maybe my parents were renovating the house or planning something for Samuel. I called Mom. "Isaac, why are you worrying?" Her voice was gentle but slightly rushed. "Just a few things we needed to buy. You know, Samuel's back and there's a lot to take care of." "What things, Mom?" I tried to keep my voice calm, but my chest felt heavy. $5,000 isn't a small matter. Can you explain?" She laughed, the kind of laugh I knew she used to change the subject. "Oh, Isaac, you're always so serious. Don't worry, everything's fine." Then she pivoted to ask about my work, as if my question had never existed. I hung up, a sense of unease rising like a wave. The next month's bill arrived, and this time it was $15,000. I sat in my apartment, the dim yellow light casting shadows on the dining table where I spread out the statements. There was a large charge at a real estate company and several others at luxury stores I knew my parents would never visit. I called again, this time Dad. "Dad, what's going on with the credit card? $15,000 in a month?" He sighed through the phone, his voice tinged with irritation. "Isaac, don't make a big deal out of it. Just some necessary things. You make good money, don't you? What's the harm in letting us use a little?" I bit my lip, swallowing the words I wanted to say. "I just want to know where the money's going, Dad. I'm not being stingy, but I need to understand. It's just family matters, Isaac. Don't ask too much." Then he hung up. I sat there, staring at the darkened phone screen, feeling as if someone had punched me in the chest. Family matters. The phrase echoed in my mind, but it didn't bring the warmth it once did. It felt like a wall, keeping me from the truth. The following month, the bill skyrocketed to $50,000. I didn't call again. I couldn't bear the way my parents dodged my questions, the way they made me feel petty for wanting the truth. I started digging deeper, downloading the full transaction history to my computer. The charges were no longer random. They followed a pattern. A large sum at a BMW dealership, another at a real estate company, and several others for watches and designer clothes. My blood boiled, but I told myself to stay calm. There had to be an explanation. Surely my parents wouldn't. I began to suspect, so I logged into Facebook and checked Samuel's profile. There was a photo of him standing in front of a new BMW, his smile radiant with the caption, "Welcome to the new chapter." I scrolled down, my heart pounding. Another post a few days later, Samuel posing in front of a modern house with gleaming glass doors, captioned, "New house, new life, thanks to those who always support me." Mom's comment below, "So proud of you, Sammy." I slammed my laptop shut, my breathing heavy. I didn't want to believe it, but the numbers didn't lie. I cross-checked the dates on Samuel's posts with the transactions on the card. They matched perfectly. The car, the house, all paid for with money from my credit card. My money. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch staring out the window, the city lights flickering like wordless questions. Why didn't my parents tell me? Why did they use my money to buy those things for Samuel without even asking me? I thought about the years I'd slaved away, the sleepless nights finishing case files, the way I lived frugally so my parents could live comfortably. And now, I felt like a fool, a tool exploited. I wanted to scream, to call my parents right then and demand an explanation. But I didn't. I just sat there in the darkness, the pain spreading like ink on paper. I knew I had to confront them. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I called in sick, a rarity that surprised my assistant over the phone. I drove to Ohio, 4 hours on the highway, my mind swirling between anger and hurt. I didn't call ahead. I didn't want to give my parents time to prepare their answers. I needed the truth, and I needed to hear it directly from them. When I arrived, my parents were in the backyard, Mom watering plants, Dad sitting in a chair reading the newspaper. They looked at me surprised but showed no signs of concern. "Isaac, Why didn't you let us know you were coming? Mom set down the watering can, wiping her hands on her apron, her smile as warm as ever. But I didn't smile back. We need to talk, I said, my voice harder than I intended, about the credit card. Dad folded the newspaper, frowning. This again? Isaac, why are you so worked up? I pulled out my phone, opened the statement, and placed it in front of them. $5,000, $15,000, $50,000, and this month $200,000. I want to know where the money went. Mom glanced at Dad, then at me, her eyes shimmering as if she might cry. Isaac, don't make a big deal out of it. It's family money, isn't it? We help each other. Help each other? I felt the blood rush to my head, my voice rising. Mom, Dad, I gave you that card so you could live comfortably, not to buy cars and houses for Samuel. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence, as if the air in the backyard had been drained. Dad stood up, his face flushed. Isaac, what are you talking about? You're the eldest. You have a responsibility to help your brother. Samuel needs a fresh start and you have the money. Do you want him to struggle like you did back then? I was stunned, as if I'd been slapped. Responsibility? I repeated, my voice trembling. I work 15 hours a day, I live frugally, I've never asked anyone for a dime. I've done everything so you wouldn't have to worry. And now you're saying it's my responsibility to buy Samuel a house? Mom stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder, but I stepped back. Isaac, don't be selfish, she said, her voice soft but sharp. Samuel is your brother. He's been away for so long he needs us. You're successful, you can help. Why are you keeping score with family? I looked at Mom, then at Dad, searching for a sign that they understood me, that they saw how much this hurt. But in their eyes, I saw only reproach. I wasn't Isaac, their son. I was a machine, a financial resource, a tool to keep Samuel happy. I'm not keeping score, I said, my voice hoarse. But I deserve respect. You took my money without even asking to buy a car, a house for Samuel. Have you ever thought about how that makes me feel? Dad turned away, muttering something about me being too sensitive. Mom just shook her head, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. I stood there in the backyard of my parents' house where I'd played as a kid, but I felt like a stranger. The truth stabbed my heart like a cold knife. They didn't just favor Samuel, they took my sacrifices for granted. I turned and walked to my car, leaving my parents in their silence. As I drove away, tears welled up, not from anger, but from pain. I'd spent my life trying to be a good son, a responsible brother, but in return, I'd been betrayed. I drove back to Brooklyn in silence, the radio off, only the sound of the engine and my own heavy breathing filling the car. The highway stretched out before me, but my mind wandered to the past. To the years I thought I was building a strong family with my sweat and responsibility. The tears had dried, but the pain still smoldered, like a wound touched too many times. I remembered the early days of my career when I was 25, fresh out of law school, working for a small firm with a barely livable salary. I rented a cramped apartment in Queens where the smell of mildew clung to the walls and the hot water worked only when it felt like it. I worked 18 hours a day drafting contracts, researching cases, sometimes falling asleep at the table with papers scattered around. On those nights when the city slept, I told myself, I'm doing this for Mom and Dad, so they won't have to worry in their old age. I didn't dream of mansions or fancy cars, didn't crave fame. I just wanted my family to be secure. Samuel was in high school then, carefree and spoiled. He got designer sneakers from our parents when his school basketball team won a game, was forgiven when he skipped class to hang out with friends. I remember one time when I came home to visit, my parents proudly showed off a painting Samuel had done at school. They hung it on the living room wall, beaming with pride. I looked at the painting, then at my law school diploma, still unopened in its box. I said nothing, just smiled, but something inside me stung, like a small scratch. When I started succeeding, landing big contracts, I didn't change my lifestyle. I still drove my old Honda, wore shirts from discount stores, and saved every penny to send to my parents. I gave them the credit card, saying, use it, I'll take care of everything. Mom hugged me. Dad patted my shoulder, but no one asked what I'd done to earn that money. No one asked if I was tired, if I was lonely. They just said, "Isaac, you're our pride and joy." But that pride, I slowly realized, was just a label, not love for me, the person I am. I remembered the time Samuel messed up, like when he blew through the savings our parents gave him on a failed project in Japan. They called me, their voices anxious, and I sent the money right away, no questions asked. Samuel never thanked me, never apologized. He just grinned and said, "You're a superhero, Isaac." I smiled back, but that smile grew more forced each time. I wondered, did anyone in my family ever truly see me? See the nights I stayed up, the opportunities I turned down to prioritize them? See me, Isaac, not the money-making machine they relied on? Sitting in my apartment that night, the dim yellow light casting shadows on a family photo on the shelf, me, Samuel, Mom, and Dad smiling brightly at a picnic 10 years ago. I stared at it but felt no warmth. I saw a young Isaac, always trying to do right, always sacrificing, but never loved like Samuel was. That favoritism, I realized, wasn't new. It had always been there. I was just too busy carrying the load to notice. I couldn't sleep that night. My apartment, once a refuge from the world, now felt like an empty space, mirroring the pain in my heart. I sat on the sofa, my laptop open in front of me, the credit card statement glowing like an accusation. $200,000. That number wasn't just money, it was my trust, my sacrifices, discarded by my parents and Samuel without a single explanation. I thought about the confrontation in Ohio, about the way my parents looked at me, not with remorse but with reproach. "Don't be selfish, Isaac," Mom had said. "You have a responsibility," Dad had said. But what is responsibility if it's only a one-way street? I'd given them everything, my time, my energy, my money. But in return, I'd been used. I wasn't their son, not Samuel's brother. I was a bank, a tool, and when I dared to ask questions, I became the petty one. I picked up my phone, my finger hovering over the bank's number. Part of me wanted to call my parents to give them one more chance to explain, but I knew if I did, they'd dodge again, make me feel like I was the one in the wrong. I was tired of being the good guy, tired of sacrificing without being seen. I'd given them too much for too long. I called the bank. The employee's voice was calm, professional. "Mr. Monroe, which credit card would you like to deactivate?" I read out the card number, my voice steady, but my heart pounded. "Would you like to set a new limit or cancel it entirely?" she asked. "Cancel," I said without hesitation. "Cancel it permanently." When I hung up, a cold rush ran through me, as if I'd just severed an invisible tether. I wasn't angry anymore. For the first time in years, I felt relief. I'd spent my life carrying the weight, being the good son, the responsible brother. But now, I wanted to live for myself. I closed the laptop, stood up, and looked out the window. The city was still alive, its lights still shining, and somewhere out there, my parents and Samuel were going on with their lives, unaware that everything had changed. I didn't know how they'd react when they found out the card was canceled, but this time I didn't care. I'd done enough, and now I needed to protect myself. The day I canceled the credit card, it felt like I'd released a boulder from my chest. But I knew that somewhere in Ohio, that boulder was about to crash down on my parents and Samuel, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face the fallout. I tried to return to my routine, office, case files, morning runs along the Hudson River, but my mind kept drifting to them. I wondered how they'd react, whether they'd call, blame me, or stay silent. I braced myself for every possibility, but deep down I held a faint hope that they'd understand. A week passed without a call. I checked my phone every evening, half expecting, half dreading. The silence unnerved me like a storm gathering on the horizon. Then one morning, while I was in a meeting with a client, my phone buzzed incessantly. I glanced at the screen, Mom's number. I let it ring, my heart pounding, and when the meeting ended, I saw 7 missed calls and a text. "Isaac, call back now." Big problem. I didn't call back right away. I sat in my office, staring out the window, sunlight glinting off the skyscrapers. I knew what was happening. The credit card was canceled, and now they were feeling the consequences. I took a deep breath and dialed Mom. "Isaac," her voice came through, frantic and trembling. "What's wrong with the card? We needed money to pay bills and the bank says it's not working anymore." "I canceled it, Mom," I said, my voice calm though my chest felt heavy. "I told you and Dad I didn't agree with how you were using the money. I can't keep doing this." "But Isaac, you don't understand," she was almost shouting. "Samuel needs money to pay off the house. The bank is threatening to foreclose. You can't abandon your brother like this." I bit my lip, anger rising, but I kept my voice steady. "Mom, I'm not abandoning anyone, but I'm not Samuel's bank. He bought a house, a car with my money, and no one asked me. Now he has to take responsibility." Mom started crying, her sobs making me falter for a moment. "Isaac, how can you be so cold? We're family. You have money, you're supposed to help." I stayed silent, letting her words echo. Family. That word used to mean everything to me, but now it felt like an excuse for exploitation. "Mom," I finally said, "I've helped too much. I don't have anything left to give." I hung up, my hands shaking. The phone buzzed immediately, Dad this time. I didn't answer. I couldn't bear another argument, more accusations that I was selfish, that I was betraying the family. I silenced the phone, shoved it into a drawer, and tried to focus on work, but my mind was blank. A few weeks later, I heard news from a mutual friend of Samuel and me. Samuel's new house had received a foreclosure notice from the bank. He couldn't afford the loan payments, and my parents, without my credit card, had no way to help. Samuel started selling off belongings, the TV, furniture, even the shiny BMW he'd flaunted on Facebook. I thought I'd feel vindicated, but I didn't. I just felt empty, like I was watching a family I once loved collapse from a distance. My parents called a few more times, leaving long voicemails, some pleading, others angry. "Isaac, you've ruined Samuel's life," Dad shouted in one message. "You're his brother. How can you be so heartless?" I listened, then deleted them without responding. I didn't want to argue, didn't want to explain. I'd made myself clear, and now I needed to stand by my decision. Samuel didn't call. I wasn't surprised. He was always good at dodging responsibility, letting our parents clean up his messes. But I heard through friends that he was struggling. His design work was unsteady, and the lavish lifestyle he'd built with my money was now a burden. Part of me pitied him, but a larger part was just exhausted. I didn't ruin Samuel's life. He and our parents did that themselves. That night, I sat in my apartment, looking out at the city. New York was still alive, still buzzing, but I felt detached, like I no longer belonged anywhere. My parents and Samuel were facing the consequences, and I knew they blamed me. But for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I'd done the right thing, not for them, but for myself. After canceling the card, I felt a strange void. It wasn't pain or anger, but a stillness, as if I'd stepped out of a stifling room into fresh air. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about my parents, Samuel, unexpected bills, or the invisible responsibilities weighing on my shoulders. It was just me, and that was both terrifying and liberating. I began to change, not in grand ways, but in small steps, as if relearning how to live. I stopped checking my phone every hour, stopped waiting for accusatory messages from my parents. I spent evenings reading books, listening to jazz, or walking along the Hudson River, letting the city lights remind me that life goes on. I realized I'd neglected myself for too long, living like a machine to serve my family, forgetting that I too deserved happiness. One day I stood in front of the mirror in my apartment, looking at the 38-year-old man with a few gray hairs and tired eyes. I thought about the old Honda that had been with me for 10 years. The cheap clothes I wore to save money, the small apartment with its worn furniture. I'd lived simply, not because I didn't want more, but because I thought my money should go toward my parents' comfortable retirement. But now I wanted to live for myself. I went to a car dealership one weekend afternoon. The salesman, a young guy, showed me around rows of gleaming vehicles. I didn't choose a BMW like Samuel's. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I picked an Audi Q5, silver gray, understated but powerful and reliable. As I signed the contract, I felt a strange thrill like a kid buying his first toy. Driving home with the windows down, the wind rushing in, I laughed out loud to myself for the first time in ages. Next, I decided to buy a new apartment. I found a place in Brooklyn Heights, not too far from my old one, but more spacious, with large windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. I signed a mortgage, a decision I would have once considered reckless. But now, I wasn't afraid. I wanted a space of my own, a place to start over, free from the shadow of bills or family expectations. When I got the keys, I stood in the empty apartment, sunlight streaming through the glass, and felt like I'd reclaimed a part of myself. I started spending on myself, not extravagantly, but enough to appreciate the value of what I earned. I bought a new suit, not a clearance rack special, but a tailored one that fit perfectly, making me feel more confident walking into the courtroom. I signed up for a cooking class, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. I learned to make pasta from scratch, and every moment in the kitchen made me feel more alive, as if I were reclaiming the years I'd lost. The biggest change wasn't the new car or the apartment, but how I saw myself. I was no longer the eldest brother carrying everyone's burdens, no longer the family's tool. I was Isaac, a lawyer, a man with dreams, sorrows, and the right to live for himself. The betrayal by my parents and Samuel, though painful, had set me free. I no longer felt the pressure to please anyone. I only needed to please myself. One Saturday afternoon, as I was unpacking in my new apartment, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there stood my parents and Samuel. They were bathed in the pale Brooklyn sunlight, but no one was smiling. Mom looked older than I remembered, her hair grayer, her eyes red-rimmed. Dad had his arms crossed, his face tense. Samuel stood behind them, head bowed, lacking the confident air I'd once seen on his Facebook posts. "Isaac," Mom spoke first, her voice hoarse. "We need to talk." I nodded, saying nothing, and invited them in. The new apartment still smelled of fresh paint, with a few unopened boxes stacked in the corner. They looked around, and I saw surprise in Mom's eyes, irritation in Dad's. Samuel didn't meet my gaze, quietly sitting on the sofa. "You're living well, aren't you?" Dad said, his tone laced with bitterness. "New car, new house, while your family's struggling." I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "Dad, I'm living off the money I earned. I don't owe anyone anything." Mom started crying. "Isaac, we were wrong. I know your father and I hurt you. We shouldn't have used your money like that, but Samuel's in big trouble. The bank's about to take his house. Can you help one more time, just this once?" Samuel finally looked up, his eyes tired but flickering with a hint of hope. "Isaac, I'm sorry. I didn't think things would get this bad. I just wanted a fresh start. If you help, I swear I'll pay you back." I looked at them, my parents, my brother, the people who once meant the world to me. Part of me wanted to reach out, to fix everything, to be the big brother who always solved problems. But then I remembered the nights I sat alone, the mounting bills, the accusations that I was selfish. I recalled the feeling of being used, treated like a tool. And I knew that if I helped this time, it would all happen again. "No," I said, my voice firm. "I've given too much. I gave you the card so you could live comfortably, not to buy houses and cars for Samuel. I'm sorry Samuel's struggling, but that's not my responsibility." Dad shot to his feet, his face flushed. "Isaac, what are you saying? You're abandoning your brother, your family?" "I'm not abandoning anyone," I replied, meeting his eyes. "I'm choosing myself. You chose Samuel, used my money without asking. Now you have to face the consequences." Mom sobbed, but I didn't waver. Samuel lowered his head, silent. I stood up and opened the door. "I think we're done here." They left without looking back. When the door closed, I stood there, my heart pounding, but not from pain. I felt relief, as if I'd finally cut the last tether binding me. I wasn't angry anymore. I just wanted them out of my life. The following month, I fully settled into my new apartment. I hung a painting on the wall, a seascape I'd bought during a short trip to Maine, where I stood before the ocean and felt peace for the first time in years. I drove my new Audi to work, not to show off, but because I loved the sense of freedom behind the wheel. I wore my new suit, stood in the courtroom and felt stronger, no longer haunted by my family's expectations. I heard about my parents and Samuel through mutual acquaintances. Samuel's house was foreclosed and he moved back in with our parents, working part-time to pay off debts. My parents cut back on spending, living off their retirement funds, no longer indulging in trips or lavish meals. They didn't call me and I didn't reach out either. I wasn't happy to see them struggle, but I didn't feel guilty. They'd learned a costly lesson about selfishness, about taking love and responsibility for granted. I started living true to my values. I joined a nonprofit organization helping young people from tough backgrounds start their careers because I knew what it was like to rise on your own. I traveled, not extravagantly, but enough to see the world. A week in Iceland, a hiking trip in Colorado. I bought a high-end coffee machine, and every morning I sat by the window, sipping coffee, watching Manhattan wake up, feeling like I belonged to myself. My freedom wasn't about the new car, the spacious apartment, or the trips. It was the feeling of being unbound, of no longer living to please others. I was Isaac Monroe, not the eldest brother, not the money-making machine. I was a man with dreams, scars, and a life to live. One evening, I stood on my apartment's balcony looking at the twinkling city lights.